Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast, the first episode for 2021. Join me as usual, Rohan. How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, good. Happy New Year. Hope you had a good break.
Had a good break. Can't complain.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. The configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
Well, a new year and a new release cycle for Home Assistant, so it's now the monthly release cycles just for the Home Assistant release, so that's what we're here to talk about today. And of course, we had the Home Assistant conference last year, which we had so much fun at. We were live there, a special live broadcast there. What did you think of it, Rohan? Did you think we did all right?
I thought it was great. I mean, I had a lot of fun with it, and it sounded like a lot of people had enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, so, it was good to see the comments, people as we were doing our thing, people, commenting along. And
yeah, I think that's definitely something we wanna encourage as well, right? And we love the feedback, we love comments and stuff like that. So I felt really good about that.
Because it was live, there was so much we had to talk about and break down at the time. But one thing I've been noticing since after the conference, and of course it was announced at the conference, is Home Assistant Blue, and a lot of people have been, they ordered during the conference, they've been arriving, they've been opening them up, doing unboxings. I think Dr. Z's did an unboxing straight after the conference.
Mm-hmm.
I am really jealous of this device. It actually looks like people's photos of this device are amazing. What are your thoughts on it? Like, do you think it's something that's on your radar to purchase? Or
yeah, I mean, I do. I don't know what I want to do with it yet.
Same,
a big part of me wants it just for the commemorative part of it. But I mean, I think it's also because a lot of what I'm doing right now works really well and the performance is really good and all that. So, because I am running it on a virtual machine on one of my lab servers, right? It's just like the one that I have at home. So I think that means regardless, it's not going to be as powerful as what I have running here. So I'm a little bit undecided on that part. I know I was running it a separate instance in the past on a Raspberry Pi. If you remember, we talked about that one a while ago.
And you had your remote instance hooked up to it or something like that. You were running two instances that way.
Exactly. But I actually ended up collapsing all of that stuff into one. So, I don't know if I want to go back to two again, or I don't know if I want to break out. But, and really at this point, I have no benefit in doing so. So my my Zigbee network is strong enough, even though it runs out of my basement.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in a bungalow, so it's not like I have multiple stories or anything like that. I just have my basement and my main floor.
Yep.
So, and that was really my biggest concern about splitting it off, which seems to be fine. So will I get one? Probably, honestly, just for the commemorative piece of it. But I don't know if at this point for me personally, if I need one. If anybody is starting out new, absolutely, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. I know personally I've always tried to reduce my e-waste and reuse this hardware as much as I can, right? So, I've progressively had to, I'm using my parents' old computer at the moment, to run my main instance of Home Assistant, and I'm always trying to look for better performance, right? And I did like that Paul has said in the conference, I think that the hardware is twice as much that they currently need in Home Assistant. So it's, future-proof, right? And of course...
Yeah, at least for a little bit.
Yeah, and all the add-ons, I've always been jealous of people running all the add-ons that Frank does, and it just looks very tempting, right?
Exactly, right? And I think what it comes down to is, if, especially for a novice user or a new user to Home Assistant, I think it's actually perfect.
Yeah.
Right. For me to use, can I migrate everything off and do everything? Sure. But is it worth it for me to do that? I don't know just yet.
One thing I'd be interested to find out before I could commit is to see, because we know, this has obviously been the evolution of it. We had Hass.io, then became Home Assistant OS and all that.
Mm-hmm.
This is now, they're locked down, or I need to research, is it their locked down box? Am I not going to have root access to this box, or am I going to have to use one of those SSH add-ons, Home Assistant add-ons to give me root access? And am I going to be in this sort of jail of what Home Assistant wants me to edit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and a part of me hopes that's the case, right? And I know I'm probably gonna enrage a lot of people by saying that, but the reason is, I think at the end of the day, again, from a platform perspective, if you look at it, if you want everybody to adopt it, I don't know if you necessarily want things like root access and things like that without having to, go around leaps and bounds, right? Do I need root access? Sure. But at the same time, does everybody? Probably not. I mean, you look at most hardware appliances you get out there, like if you go get a SmartThings box, are you getting root access? No, you're not.
No, that's true. You probably don't need it.
Right.
I guess at the end of the day, it is one of those, what is it, an Odroid underneath device. Yep. So I'm guessing you could just flash it. Or however you would need to, like a Raspberry Pi, you would just remove do a complete reinstall, and you've got a little Odroid that you can do whatever you want, right? In a nice Home Assistant blue box.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can use it exactly as, the manufacturer was, hey, here's your box. Yep. Wipe it and do whatever else you want with it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, the Home Assistant team did come out and say, listen, this is literally just an Odroid box with a Home Assistant wrapper around it, and it has Home Assistant installed on it.
Yeah.
So,
and I also saw, I think Dr. Z's put out a thing on Thingiverse for a mount for your Home Assistant Blue as well. So if you want to mount it on a wall, you can, and you've got a 3D printer, you can grab those files and print it off, and there's a little mount for you as well.
That's kind of neat. Okay.
So I think a lot of people are loving this hardware, and I know that I think the nice metallic blue one they said in the conference was going to be like a limited run. I hope they continue it because it looks really nice. Looks really premium.
Yeah, exactly. I do know a couple of people that have gotten it, and they seem to be pretty happy with it. I haven't talked to them. I just talked to them right before everything kind of closed for the holidays. And when I chatted with them, it was, they were really excited. They're like, oh yeah, I got it today. I received it, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So I want to see, I'm going to try and follow up with a couple of those folks and see how they actually made out, right? What was your experience like and all that? And again, I might pick one up just for that as well, just to see, how that's going.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so should we get on to this release? I think it's I wouldn't say it's a huge release, end of year, so it's the first release for the year, so January release, but which means that a lot of the work was done during December, and of course, half of December, everyone's on holidays anyway, so not a huge amount of stuff to come out, I think, and which is probably a good reason. I think this is the first release post AKA version 1.0, right? So...
Yeah, exactly.
I think, some few little updates, but one that I was really excited to see is the improvement to Mqtt discovery for device trackers. I actually, this is one of those things where you're like, oh, it wasn't there. I could have sworn it was there, but Mqtt discovery is now supported for device trackers. So if you don't know what that is, Mqtt is a device protocol that allows, communication throughout your local network or even across the internet. Very small packets, very fast transmission, great for IoT devices. You'll hear things like ZigBee to MQTT, Z-Wave to MQTT. I personally love it. I have so many sensors running across my network. I think I've, those, do you remember those Xiaomi flower sensors, the flower care sensors? Yeah. I think I have a few of those using that as well. Yeah. It's great. I also use it to connect a couple of my Home Assistant instances, That's right. Yeah, so, great to see that device trackers are now supported. I think this will just enable, a lot of people to integrate with Home Assistant without having to do, like, a full-on integration with Home Assistant. For example, a great one is ZigBee to MQTT, right? They don't have to do a whole separate Python integration with Home Assistant. They can just tailor and publish messages over their MQTT server, and Home Assistant knows how to pick them up and bring them in as full-fledged entities. So this is going to allow people to really do some great things with the device trackers. I don't know, Rohan, have you got any crazy ideas that you could use? I know you had a SmartThings, a ZigBee sensor that you had, like a presence sensor.
Yeah. So what I did, and just kind of talking about what we were talking about before. So right now I actually don't use that. I actually had my MQTT server turned off until about a week ago. So I took my USB Conb stick, which I use for my Zigbee network, and so that's my Zigbee radio. So I took it and plugged it right in the back of my server, and basically just joined that in with my primary Home Assistant instance.
Using the ZHA, like the native Zigbee integration in.
Exactly. Yep. And then it comes in through there. But before that, I did use MQTT to I tried MQTT. It was okay. And then I was using the remote Home Assistant plugin to synchronize those entities before from a separate Raspberry Pi. But yeah, now I didn't do that anymore. And even for my the Mi Flora devices and my Flora devices from Xiaomi, those are the flower sensors. I was using MQTT for that specifically, and then I actually moved off of my Raspberry Pi Zero about not that long ago. I guess it's been a few months, probably about 6 months or so. And then I moved that to an ESP32 with ESPHome, so that just comes right in now. So.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll have to pick your brain about that in a minute. But so I'm wondering, like with this MQTT update, like people are going to be able to create like random device trackers now, right? Like you could have, like we have just talked about that. There's that Zigbee sensor that you have from SmartThings, but people could do anything now with MQTT. You could have a random Raspberry Pi Zero that you've got around. You could have a NFC tag that could publish as a device tracker if you were smart enough. So I'm really excited to see this. I think it's going to, personally, presence in home automation is one of my favorite topics because there's so many ways to skin that cat. And I'm really glad to see this is a major improvement.
Well, exactly. And this is actually a recommendation that came from Hacktoberfest. At least it had the Hacktoberfest tag on it. In GitHub. So, I'm interested to see what people are doing with this as well. I'm excited to see what people are doing with, again, things like ESP32s and things like that, where you say, hey, you know what, dump this into MQTT and have Home Assistant pick that up, kind of thing, right? So can be kind of neat if you get a new device. It's almost that, hey, it just works kind of an experience, right? Where something picks up your new device and it says, okay, go. And, Home Assistant brings it in and things like that. Obviously, you need to build some automations and stuff around that. But if 80% of the work is done for you, then, hey, I'm not complaining there.
So why did you move the My Flora stuff away from the Raspberry Pi Zero to an ESP?
Honestly, it's entirely it was two things, right? So basically, after I had moved my Zigbee stuff off to directly on the server, off of some MQTT stuff, and then afterwards I moved it onto my server. But the most annoying thing about the Raspberry Pi was it was running Ubuntu on it. So, about my Raspberry Pi Zero that I had with the script to pull the My Flora information data out. So I had to keep that updated and all of that stuff, and it was just kind of cumbersome. And whenever, if that ever crashed or did anything like that, and I honestly just never remembered how to go start that. There was a couple of things I had to do, and it was just like I had a cron job for it, and it was fine. It was working. But then when it broke, and I was just like, ugh, I was just so done dealing with it. And
then you can't remember the commands that you did to get it installed and all that.
Yeah, well, more than anything, I just don't remember what directory it was in.
Yeah, that's my problem too, right?
Every time I was just like, oh my God, I hate this. And it's one of those, there's got to be a better way kind of thing, right? Yeah. I hadn't played with many microcontrollers or anything before. I mean, I had an ESP8266 that I did a couple of things with, but didn't really go anywhere. So I got an ESP32. I think it was like $12 Canadian. Shipped to me from Amazon, whatever. Basically, I played with ESPHome and said, okay, let me get it set up. And they actually do have a specific config for the Xiaomi flower sensors, and they worked great.
So did you have to solder anything or build out a Bluetooth module or anything, or is it just you buy something?
I was way too lazy for that. That's exactly what I didn't want to do, right?
Because when you said ESP30, I'm like, Rohan, that sounds too fancy for you, right? Like, it seems like way more involved.
Yeah. No, it literally just, it had everything built into it. So the only thing is, what I did is I found a power cable for it and plugged it in.
Oh, really? Wow, that's awesome.
That was the hardest part. And I got to say that was as much as we talked about it in the show and stuff in the past. That was actually my first time I used ESPHome, and it was great. I thought it was, worked really well for me. So, yeah.
I like the idea that, you don't have, an operating system to manage now. Like, you have a dedicated device that just is designed to pull in your flower sensors.
Yep.
And it just works perfectly, right? You lose power, it turns back on, it's doing its job, right?
It's doing its thing. Exactly. I can't go into it and muck with it if I wanted to, which is fantastic. Yeah. So, unless obviously I go into the...
you reflash it with something.
Yeah, like I change some config in the ESPHome, or and that's the only downside is if I do want to add a new device or anything like that, I have to go into the ESPHome config and do it, right? Which honestly to me is not a downside. It's just it's doing things differently.
So when you say new device, like, does that mean if you get like a new flower sensor, you have to go in and reflash it?
Correct.
With and then you have to flash it with like the MAC addresses of each flower sensor you want to pick up?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So it's actually got a scan as well. But you can just use any whatever BLE scanner and pull that MAC address off and just pop it in
Plug
there.
it in.
Yeah, and you're good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. All right. Well, I might have to add that to my list of 2021 projects to do.
Yeah. And the only thing I found that it didn't pull, or that it doesn't pull, that my Raspberry Pi Zero did, was the battery information off of that. And I have a feeling maybe I just did something. I honestly set it up and then I didn't bother looking after that. It's been one of those to do things, but in all honesty, it works well enough that I don't care. Whatever. I lose battery when everything says NA and I'm not getting any information. I know it's time to change my battery, or the sensor died, which a couple of them in my case did die. So
from Xiaomi, like the Xiaomi sensors died.
Yeah, it's just whatever. It's solder and silicon, right? So stuff happens. Yeah,
especially when in a wet environment, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of them was literally outside. I don't even know if it's. I know they're rated for they're waterproof, whatever, but I don't even know if it's rated for the cold or whatever. And I didn't
indoor, aren't they? Are they indoor sensors?
I'm fairly certain they are. I know there is a water seal around it and stuff. They do say it's waterproof, but I just said, nah, whatever. Just stuck it out there. And
stuck it outside, yeah.
I think it's been outside for 2 years probably, and it stopped working, and I was like, okay, whatever. Like, should I take better care of my stuff? Yes, but I didn't, so here we are. Yeah, so.
That's nice. Oh, you've definitely added to my project list, so thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. There you go. HomeKit, it's a little more of a bug fix, but now you can set a target temperature range rather than a specific temperature for a climate device. So if you have some kind of a thermostat or whatever that's HomeKit based, I guess in the past it only let you say, okay, I want to set it to 22 degrees Celsius. Now you can say, hey, I want it to be between 20 and 24. You probably don't want that wide of a range, but you get the idea. In terms of setting that. So again, that's another thing I didn't know wasn't a thing too. So
it reminds me, I've got to add HomeKit to my project list for this year too. I want to use Home Assistant as a HomeKit server or whatever the terminology is in HomeKit land, right?
Yeah.
My wife has an iPhone and I would like, her to be able to have native control without having to, instruct her how to download apps. Like, yes, there's the Home Assistant app and all that, but have you done that with your iPhone yet?
I was thinking about it this, I guess, like last week, but no, I haven't. Because I have Amazon Echoes spread out kind of throughout the house.
Yeah.
So I really don't need to. So I can just say, hey, do this, right? Turn on this light or whatever. I don't necessarily need Siri to be that for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Would I like to? Sure, but it's another integration I have to manage and it's more overhead and whatever. Is it the biggest deal? No, but it's effort.
Another failure point too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing that either myself or my girlfriend will get used to, and when it doesn't work, it's just going to bother us. So
yeah.
not that that's a good way to look at anything. But
no, but it's always in that inconvenient time, right? Like you'll be sitting down to watch a movie and you go, all right, I'll use this, and it doesn't work, and that's it, right? Then you can't enjoy the movie until you fix that problem.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I don't see that being ever really being an issue where the HomeKit integration breaks. I think for me the bigger thing is, I'm mucking about and doing something, and then Home Assistant breaks rather than
exactly.
My Amazon Echo not responding or my HomeKit not responding. Right? I mean, I have two Google Homes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, between those and the Amazon Echoes, they all work really well. And I use the Nabu Casa integration there too.
On both Google Home and the Echo?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's the Google Homes are just in mostly just in the bathroom so that people can just like turn on the fan and things like that. Because one of the automations that I have is actually to have my fans in the bathroom to turn off after 30 minutes. Right. So if you're showering and whatever, or what happens is a lot of times people just leave the fan on, just you want to get that humidity out of the air, whatever, and forget to turn it off. Right. I was notorious at doing that. My girlfriend was notorious at doing that. So I just said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to put a 30-minute timer on it and then kill it. But, sometimes if you're in there, like I'll be shaving, I'll do this, I'll do that.
Yeah.
The 30 minutes
turns off on you. Yeah. It goes really quickly, right?
Right. And and at that point, I'm usually yelling, hey, turn on the fan, right? And then it'll turn the exhaust fan back on. So it's mostly around that. And mostly just because before she moved in with me, I wanted to tinker with Google Homes because I had Amazon Echoes all around my house. So I got two Google Homes for her when she was living, when she wasn't living with me. And, so I had those.
So now you've got both.
Yeah, I just said, okay, here's a different way of using it, right? So the Google Homes are actually a little more restrictive in terms of what they can do, because I was going to put one in the garage as well, and what I didn't want to have in there is my garage door controls. So I don't want it to be like, hey, open the garage door if you just yell really loudly from outside and it says okay, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I kind of use that as a point of security too, so Google Home has a lot less access as opposed to my Amazon Echo, and that's not because one is more or less secure than the other. It's just how I have them placed around my house.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. But good that you're thinking that way, right?
Yeah. That was a really long forward into why I'm not doing HomeKit.
Yes.
So.
Now we're just getting sidetracked here. So Somfy now has climate controls and battery sensors. So I thought Somfy was the smart blind company. I didn't realize they had a climate device.
So what it might be, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the Somfy integration that has that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the battery sensors, I think, make sense just because, again, they're wireless models. They need batteries. Great, monitor that. The climate controls, I think, is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm guessing they do have some kind of just monitoring for temperature and stuff. So it can come down when it's if it's too hot or too cold, just to adjust the temperature in the room.
Yeah.
Or they may also use their sunlight, like how bright is it, like kind of lux meter style.
Yeah.
They might do that too under the climate bracket.
Interesting.
I don't know if they do any other. Maybe they have some other devices too.
Because I can see they've got the Somfy sun sensor.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be, unless they're in a different market and I don't have access to it from there.
Well, I know they have some commercial stuff too, so could be for that.
Well, if you have the Somfy integration and you have those devices, well, now you can use it in Home Assistant.
There you go. Yeah, and we'd love to hear what those sensors, what the climate controls specifically for me are. That's kind of cool. All right. Some breaking changes. So Glances, if you use the Glances integration, that's one of the integrations that actually helps you monitor the hardware that you're running. especially for installations like myself, where when I'm running it on a Linux box. So before, and I never noticed this, but apparently all the entities were suffixed by _temp, even if it wasn't temperature.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they've changed that nomenclature a little bit. So now they're either suffixed by _temperature, _fan _speed, and _charge. So let's say it's like, my MacBook. So it'll be like MacBook _temp in the past, and now it'll be MacBook _temperature. So if you have automations and things like that, that may break a lot of those, because I know some folks use it, say, hey, you know what? If my CPU is going too high, reboot the machine or something like that, right? So,
and I guess if you're then exposing those entities to something like Grafana or Prometheus or something like that, that will also change in there.
Yeah.
Do you use glances? Because you've got like obviously a big setup with your lab and all that. Like
I do. I use it more for Home Assistant than for my lab stuff. Glances is actually great. It actually did help me kind of do a couple of things there. So I do use glances, and I use the integration in Home Assistant as well. And the big thing for me was I built a status page basically of like, hey, here's if something's going wrong in Home Assistant, here's what it could potentially be, or here's where it could potentially be. I have some sensors like, hey, what's my current version? Am I running an older version? Are there any breaking changes? So it's just it's a compilation of a bunch of sensors that already exist. I didn't reinvent the wheel there. Wow. And so basically, I bring in my CPU information and things like that from glances in there.
For basically the host machine that you're running that on.
Correct. Yeah, right. Exactly. And you can do remote machines and stuff as well if you have it, if it matters or if you need that. So
yeah. All right. Looks like I'm adding that to my list this year as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's it works really well. I like it quite a bit, and I'd used it in the past as well, but
you don't have any automations running off it, right? Like you haven't.
No, I didn't bother with that. But really, I should have a send me a notification if my CPU spikes above whatever, or my memory is at like 80% or something like that. But in all honesty, I update my machines way more often than I probably need to. So that ends up, rebooting it and whatever. So those are never really an issue. But yeah.
All right. Another breaking change in this release. Here we go. Nito. I think it's Nito.
I think it's Nito, isn't it?
Nito?
Yeah. Hey, Nito, you did that thing.
Like these startups just go, how can we make the most complicated name, right? Like
how can we make it painful for podcast hosts to
absolutely right?
What's the most embarrassing thing we can make them do?
So we've now dropped support for username and password authentication. So it's now going to rely on OAuth 2 authentication instead. So that's going to be basically using access tokens instead of relying over a username and password sitting somewhere in your YAML. I am going to assume that this then means that you can no longer use this integration with YAML. You might have to set it up in the UI only, if not already. So yeah, if you are upgrading to 2021.1 and you are using that integration, you will have to move over to the new OAuth integration flow.
Yeah, and I didn't see anywhere where it actually said that the YAML is getting dropped in its UI only, and that may have happened in the past. I don't remember, probably, to be honest.
Yeah, it would make sense that you would have that as a UI flow instead of it being in YAML.
Yeah, so... on that note, though, the BMW connected drive integration is so two things. One is you can now add that through the UI, and number two is that the YAML is getting deprecated from that, and they're moving to that UI only workflow.
I think this when you upgrade, it will import any YAML settings for you, so you won't have to go through the flow. But then once you've run Home Assistant for the first time, you can just delete that YAML file or the YAML, and moving forward, you'll be set up via the UI.
Yeah.
Meteo France, the unit of measurement of the UV sensor was missing and has now been added in, but it could break some of your automations, so watch out for that.
Yeah.
Actually, on weather integrations, I would like, right, I am still using the dark sky.
Yeah.
And I know Apple's brought them out and I'm moving over. Like I've got now 6 months or 5 months now before I get kicked off. Are you still using dark sky, or what are you using for your weather?
I am. What am I using? Am I even using anything? I don't think I am. I mostly use the sunlight component than anything else. I don't think I'm actually, because I did have I played with a couple of them and it was great, and I just wasn't using it, so I just offloaded it.
Really?
Yeah. So,
because I guess I have a lot of automations based on temperature, right? Like turn heating, cooling off based on, what the weather is.
Yeah. So for me, the way I do it is it's more based on my inside temperature. So what is it inside my house?
Yeah.
Especially in the winter, I'm not really opening windows or anything like that, right?
Yep.
So I have a bunch of temperature sensors, just from whatever, right? A lot of motion detectors have it, or sometimes your like water leak sensors have them. And then my Ecobee, I have a couple of extra sensors that I got with those. And so basically I make decisions based on that for the inside of my house. And in the summer, yeah, we do open the door quite a bit and stuff. But typically when we do that, I just have an automation to say if my door is open for more than 5 minutes, then turn off my AC, right? Or if it's open for more than 3 minutes, whatever that number is, turn off the AC, and then at that point, then it'll just, if it's too hot and we shut the door or whatever, it'll just turn it back on if I need to, or we'll just manually turn it back on.
Yeah, because so that, like, just relying on inside temperature, like, wouldn't work for me. So, like, here in Melbourne, we have 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is January 2021 right now. It's, middle of summer. It's supposed, right, today we've had raining all day. I think it didn't even reach over 20 degrees Celsius. So, it's basically being cold, right? So there are, days where in the middle of summer, we might need to have the heater on, or vice versa, getting in that, especially in the spring and the autumn, where it could be either way. It's hard to tell, should the house be turning the heater on or should the house be turning the air conditioning on?
Yeah.
So I don't know, we have the Bureau of Meteorology down here in Australia, but Home Assistant removed those because they were using web scraping. Right. So, yeah, I would like to know, maybe people have got some suggestions out there. What's your favorite weather platform? Feedback at housePodcast.io. I'd like to move off the dark sky as quick as possible, I think. Yeah,
that makes sense. Actually, so it turns out I do have a weather platform, but that comes in from my car. So it just takes the external temperature from there. But that's really it. I don't know if that's a good indication of weather. Right? It's not going to tell me if it's sunny or whatever. It's just,
just what it is outside. Okay, fair enough. But you don't even have like an automation if it's raining, or an automation if it's sunny outside? Like, you don't use that in your...
Not really. I was going to. So
I don't use it either.
Yeah. So
I like to have it in a home.
So when I was going to do, so when I redid my backyard, one of the things I was gonna do is put an irrigation system in, and the people ended up coming like a month earlier than they were supposed to. So I just never got the chance to do it. And I think you and I were talking about that offline, Phil. And so basically I would have cared about that, right? Because again, it was going to be around, okay, well, if it's raining outside, I don't want it to turn the sprinklers on, whatever. And a lot of that has that built in, but I want that logic in Home Assistant, right? Because that's my brain for my house. So that was, that didn't end up happening. So that was like the one thing where I really would have used it, and I cared about using it, again, in efforts of preserving water and things like that. And I was actually looking at doing it next year, but I'm not sure if I want to do it anymore. I mean, one of my neighbors actually yesterday was, or day before yesterday, was kind enough to shovel my driveway for me. Just, I woke up and I just heard, he's got an ATV, and I just heard him, going at it with on my driveway, and I was like, is he shoveling my driveway? And I looked outside, and he's like, oh yeah, you're like my 10th house. And I was like, what? Okay. And
wow,
yeah, and I was chatting with him, and he was like, my wife and I were thinking of doing the same thing, and then we didn't because we decided we don't want to water the grass at all, right? So
Right.
I don't know. I may not. I may do it and then choose when I want to water the grass. I do like having green grass at the end of the day, but at the same time, I don't want it to be that I'm wasting water, right? So I'm trying to see, my new prerogative is, can I find a balance for that, right? And see how I do that, right? Maybe it's I put a couple of sensors down and how dry is the soil? Okay, if it's really dry, then just sprinkle it a little bit with water and then do that. So I don't know.
That makes sense. It's interesting. Do you have so in Australia, we're generally a pretty dry country, So do you have and since we've had I think it was mid 2000s, we had a massive drought and there was a big, we had water restrictions and all that. So there was been a big push of using grey water and rainwater for watering your plants and your gardens. Do you have that sort of push in Canada as well?
Not as hard as we should. We have restrictions on what days we can water. And I currently forget. It's basically works as every other day is when you're allowed to water, and they encourage it, but they don't force it. And that's actually something else I wanted to look at as well, right? Is rainwater collection and see if I can do anything like that. And then if there's no rainwater, then you substitute with pipe water, whatever it's called. Right, with city water, and so nothing really that which we could do way more, I think, as a community, but there's not a whole lot out there for at least where I am, and that's kind of per municipality or per district. It's not really maybe it's a provincial thing. No, I don't think.
It's not
I don't even think it's a provincial wide thing. I think it's where you live is kind of determines their water situation because water is done at a municipality level here, right? So
yep, interesting.
All right. So Avery, I'm not actually sure what the component is, but the component no longer exists, so it really doesn't matter. So the Home Assistant teams removed that component because they seem to have changed their API and are not very friendly towards using it. Sorry, that was me extrapolating that just to make that clear. I don't know that that's what it was, but they seem to have changed their API, and it seems to be really hard to get that API information. So I think that's what's pulled it. So
they were the platform that allowed you to check when your next scheduled waste pickup was for. So yeah, and even before using this release, I think on the Home Assistant page, there was a warning saying, it uses an unofficial API to obtain data. Please use at your own risk. So yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. I've always wondered, how complicated are people's waste pickup schedules around the world to warrant the use of an API? I'm guessing there has to be some complex, because, I don't know about you, Rohan, but here I just have 1 week it's recycling and the next week it's the green waste or the compost waste, right? There's no other chain. That's it, right? And so you can easily do that I've used a template sensor, based on the week number. If it's an odd week, it means it's recycling. If it's an even week, then it means it's the garden waste bin, right? Very simple to do. You don't need to poll APIs or anything like that. And it works.
Yeah, I think it's also just about the effort that it takes to build that, right? I know for us, it kind of depends. So I think twice a year they do batteries, and I never know when that is. And then seasonally they do leaf pickup. So we get these brown bags. I don't know if you guys have that too. We basically, you go to wherever, Costco, Home Depot, or whatever.
Yep.
You pick up these big brown bags, and in the fall, basically you take all of the leaves that have fallen down, you sweep that up and put it into these bags, and then they collect them, and that basically goes into some other compost process, I guess. I don't know if it's the same composting process or what, but so that only happens after a certain time, and naturally, with me being me, I chose this year to do that the week after the last pickup was done. So I have 2 bags of leaves right now in my garage that are going to sit there all of winter. And
they're gonna dry out nicely.
No, they're going to soak up, because what happens is the salt melts from the ice melts from the car and then just gets under there. And it's going to be, so it's perfect. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that I did there. So, and so that happens at certain times of the year. And then for us, I mean, typically ours is pretty straightforward, right? It's recycling and compost every week, and then garbage every other week. And and then depending on where you live, it's, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, right? So it's not that complicated unless you have some of this other extra stuff kind of sprinkled on top of it, right? Like the leaf collection and so on, which are seasonal.
What are you using so are you doing any like waste management automations?
No, unfortunately, the one where I am, they don't have any data. And honestly, I haven't looked too deep into it, because again, it's one of those things. But they do have an app, and I did look to see if they have an API for that app, and it didn't look like it. But basically, it's just an app that goes in, and it's put out by my municipality who does the pickups. So they basically just sends me an alert saying, hey, like I think my pickups are Wednesday, so Tuesday night it's like, hey, by the way, tomorrow, don't forget you have garbage and compost and recycling and leaf pickup. Whatever those, depending on the week. So
see, I did just do that. Like, so our council here does not do anything smart like that. So it's literally Home Assistant working out what day of the week, what week it is, and then Home Assistant sends me an alert the night before. Hey, don't put. Do
you have to work around like long weekends and stuff too? So for us, because they do pickups then still.
So even if it's Christmas Day, like every day, like if your designated Tuesday is your pickup day, it doesn't matter if it's a public holiday or whatever. Your garbage will be collected on that Tuesday.
Interesting. So for us, it's the following day.
Right.
Even if there's a stat holiday, even if my thing doesn't line up on that date, it could potentially move.
Right. So that makes sense. Where you'd need
not always
like an API to get that.
They found the most complicated way to do this, but like I get that too, right? I mean the folks picking up the garbage and whatever, they also need some time off or time with their families and stuff. So I get that part, but it's just that complication. I understand. The rest of it is just way too complex. So just to keep track of, right? So that seems to be it for the new features and breaking changes.
I actually have a question for you, Ron, before we wrap up. So I'm in the process of trying to work out. So one of my projects that I had over the summer break that I didn't get a chance to do, the Christmas break, I should say, because I know it's winter for you, is
I was like, summer break. Wow.
I wanted to rearrange some of my automations in the rooms, because my automations are pretty complicated. And I've got my new 12-week-old daughter, so now the way we use the house has changed, right? We're relying more on voice to, change the scenes of rooms or the modes in rooms, right? And I was wondering, how do you, because there's obviously Home Assistant has the concept of scenes, right? There is the whole scene logic there.
Yeah.
Do you use that? And do you have different modes? Like, do you have a movie mode or a guests over mode sort of thing for your rooms? And how do you use it?
I do have a guests over mode. But the guests over mode is mostly just don't turn stuff off at night. Like as an example, like I'll leave a couple of lights on, right? Because obviously they don't live here. So if obviously this scene this switch hasn't been used in a while because of COVID. But if somebody's staying over, basically when I say goodnight, don't turn off a couple of those lights. And maybe they're in the room, reading something or watching a YouTube video, whatever. They left the light on. Great. Then keep it on, right? I don't want to bother that. So I have that. I'm not doing that through a scene specifically. That's literally just a binary sensor that I have that's just on or off. And I have a vacation mode that does, that turns off the lights after a certain point in time too, right? And That's really it.
I have the same thing, right? Like I've got like an input boolean that just says guest mode on or off, and it basically just overrides those automations, right? Like after 9 p.m., don't turn the lights off, let them be flicked off at the switch. But what we're getting now to is that, like at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. or, whatever random time, we need those automations to, be turned off. And, so I don't want the lights to turn back on. But what I'm finding is that all of a sudden, like the lights turn off, but then the lights will turn back on because an automation has been triggered because, another condition hasn't been met. And so now my condition logic is getting so long, right? Like I have to check, is this mode activated? Is the guest mode activated? Is it, the TV on? Is the TV off, right? I just need, what am I missing here? Like there must be a better way, right?
I think that's the read my mind automation.
Yeah, basically.
But
so I don't know. And then I look at scenes, and I've never really understood how people use scenes. I get, because scenes are in like every home automation controller, right? Like this is not just Home Assistant specific, right? Everything you look at has a scene. Like Vera has scenes. I'm sure SmartThings has scenes, right? But across all the platforms I've used, I've never understood how to use them properly, right? And in Home Assistant's case, right, like I understand that you can set a scene to have this light on at this color, this light on at this color, this light at this temperature, but scenes don't allow for variables very well. For example, I can't have light turn on and it to be at a variable set by something else, right? Or which sort of.
Well, I know one of the things that scenes offers, if I remember correctly, is that let's say you had a light at a specific thing before, it can preserve, like it'll remember what that was. So if your light was like 17%.
Yes. So that's great for like automations where you want to quickly change a scene and then or do something and then go back to what all the settings were. Like I understand that, but like how, like if people have got like a movie scene or watching TV scene, like I'm guessing unless you have like everything set exactly every time, like I guess my issue is that at 9, like depending on the time of day, I use my own fuzzy logic for flux for the light color temperature, right? So yes, I could turn on the movie scene, but then depending on the time of day, the light temperatures need to be different. So
right.
And then scenes, they can't turn, like, I don't think scenes can control, like, the state of an automation yet, or at least when I've tried to do it, it didn't work. So what would you do? Would you just create, like, a huge automation and just put all the logic in one automation and hope for the best?
So that is what I do. And it almost seems like, and this is just me thinking out loud, is maybe that's something you can say, hey, let me have a couple of extra switches with automations tied behind it. So input booleans, and that triggers on offs for certain things, right? Because if you can't turn off an automation through a scene, well, maybe you can turn off a switch, because as far as the input boolean is concerned, it comes in as an input boolean, not as an automation, right? Yeah. And then flip that off, and then the automation is check if that's on or off before you run.
Yes.
But it goes back into that logic of now I'm having all of these nested logic, right? And which can get really complex to manage.
Yeah, sort of like need a state machine for Home Assistant, right?
Yeah.
Well, if anyone's got if they've solved this puzzle and they would like to contribute that to me, I'm very interested to hear feedback at haspodcast.io. Let me know how you're managing different modes for your rooms, how you're different setups for your house, like what I'm guessing there's got to be, like, people have Christmas mode, sure. I know I've got a Christmas mode, which is literally just an input boolean Christmas, but once again, I have that sprinkled throughout all my automations, right? So if I ever remove that input boolean from my Home Assistant, then I have to update 100 automations somewhere, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Unless you have one and it's an input select, but it's still just as complex.
Yeah, so that's the path I'm currently leading towards. Like each room will have like an input select of, what mode it's in, like normal mode, night mode, movie mode, guest mode sort of thing. And and then the automations will just have to check, what state is the room in. Okay, it's in this mode. I'm allowed to proceed with this automation.
Yeah. And that might mean you need to interact with the app or with Home Assistant itself a little more to set those things, right? For me, I can turn on guest mode with my Amazon Echoes.
Yes.
As I say goodnight and all that, so I'll say, hey, turn on guest mode and then goodnight, whatever, right?
Well, so my thinking here was, and because I use the Amazon Echo custom media player component, and one of the features that has is the ability to detect which Amazon Echo was just spoken to. So my goal here is that I can say to that little lady in there, turn on guest mode. And depending on which room it is, so we have my office, which is a spare bedroom, and the living room, which has the pull-out couch. Depending on which room I say that to, will dictate which room goes into guest mode.
Oh, interesting.
And so now that I have that capability, I want to extend that to things like, to use a Star Trek reference, I want to, use gray mode, right? So where it goes into a dark room, like a dark state. So, if I'm in the bedroom and I say turn on gray mode, then, that room, all the automations for the lights get disabled, right? So that's where I want to head eventually, being able to have that, finer control over what a room is doing.
Okay. Interesting. So one of the things that I started playing with a couple of days ago, as in literally like day before yesterday, was DeepStack. Now, one of the things you may be able to do is based on facial recognition, say, this is Phil, this is your wife, this is your kid, whatever.
Yeah.
Based on that, do specific things, right? If you have cameras within the room, right?
Right.
So maybe around there you can do some automation to say, okay,
so instead of
automate.
So is DeepStack just like image recognition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's image processing, right? And that's some of the stuff that Robin's working on. That we've seen some stuff come out of.
Yep.
And so there may be a way to tie that in, and based on that data. But I feel like it's getting too complex still again.
Yeah, and I think we don't have cameras in the house for...
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah. It's relying on cameras within the house, right? So,
but what are you using your cameras in the house for then? Like, or what's your goal?
So my and I haven't got this working yet, and I don't even know if it's possible. I just started playing with it. Yeah. But the idea is when I recognize people at the door, so when they ring my doorbell.
Yep.
I have a Ring doorbell there, and based on that, it says, okay, Rohan's here, whatever. Based on that, I want to see if I can do stuff. I don't know what that is yet. It might be, based on, depending on who consents into it. It might be, let's say a friend of mine comes over, I guess post lockdown, and if a friend of mine comes over, it says, okay, you know what, like this guy is here. Based on that, turn on guest mode and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so doing things like that, again, that's more just of I want to learn project and might be interesting kind of thing, but that's mostly it. And then, or the other thing I want to see is, and I have no idea how to do this, but if it's even possible, but basically if you notice like that, like, because my Ring, the doorbell that I have can actually see out to it can see all the way out until my, the main road, and which isn't far. I have a small driveway, but typically what happens is if delivery trucks, so like UPS or FedEx or one of those guys come up, can I actually recognize that as a FedEx vehicle or as a UPS vehicle and trigger an alert based on that? If I see the truck and I see, because I still have a tripwire motion only from my property, like only from my porch.
Yes. Yeah.
So if they trip the tripwire and I see the FedEx truck there, is it always a package? No, but it's possibly a package. Right.
That's cool. Yeah.
Send me an alert based on that.
So you've got just like a Ring doorbell, right? Like that's.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's possible with the Ring doorbell.
So
to be quite frank, but
maybe I'll burst it up a little bit. Maybe I'll enhance it. So I have a Ring doorbell and I have it integrated with Home Assistant as well. There is, because it's all cloud based, there's a couple of restrictions in that you can't get a live feed, right? So you can't do any image processing on the fly. With that said, though, you can have the latest recordings from the Ring video exposed to Home Assistant.
Yes.
So what I do is I use the downloader component, which is one of the core components in Home Assistant. Whenever the URL changes on the camera entity of the Ring doorbell, whenever the last file name changes, that triggers an automation to go out to Ring, download that video, and then stores it on my NAS. So essentially what you would do is grab that last motion video and then run it through your DeepStack image processing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to do. And I found that it's not too slow, like in terms of updating that recorded image.
Yep.
I actually find that I get that faster than I get it through the app typically.
Well, actually, there's two, because there's the recorded, there's the image, and then you can also get the video as well.
Sorry, yeah, I mean the video, like when I click on it, it'll give me that, right? So I find that that's actually faster than the app.
Mm-hmm.
So, which might still be okay, right, for that kind of stuff. Again, if it takes me an extra minute to process that, a friend of mine has come over, cool, whatever, right? Like it's setting a flag, like I don't care. Chances are they're not coming over a minute before they go to sleep or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not too bad. And then even with the Deliveries use case, that's the same thing too, right? And I do want to set up a couple of cameras around the house as well, outside, and pull some feeds from there as well. So that might be an alternate feed if I want a little more real time.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how you go with this DeepStack thing, especially the delivery drivers has me intrigued. I'd like to be able to recognize someone wearing high vis, because all our delivery drivers here are always in like a high vis uniform or something. Just be able to recognize that if it's Monday to Friday and someone's being tripped wearing a high vis at my front door, that'd be cool. Turn on my new mail notification, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like we have the local mailman or postie will just drop a parcel at our front door, but he won't ring the doorbell, but it'll trip the motion sensor, right? So then I go to walk out and I've got like a box blocking my front door and I have to go out another door to remove it, right?
Yeah.
So that'd be cool.
Yeah, again, this is all very new to me, so I don't even know what's possible, what's not possible, whatever. So
You've already sold me, Rohan, so you need to get the solution working.
That's the problem, right? Like, I've sold myself too, and I feel like I'm going to be grossly disappointed in myself after this.
What hardware are you running the DeepStack on though? Like, is it up in the cloud? Like, is it some Amazon instance somewhere, or is it running on a computer locally?
Yeah,
open source?
For now, it's just running as it's an open source project. For now, it's just running as a Docker container in my thing. That's why I don't have a GPU tied to it or anything. And depending on where this goes and how this goes, maybe I'll look at getting one of those like Jetson Nanos or something like that from NVIDIA.
Yep.
But in all honesty, for the one image every like 6 hours that it'll have to process, it's more than enough, at least for now, right?
Yep.
When I get more cameras set up outside and stuff and do that, then maybe that'll warrant it if this ever even takes off for me.
Yeah.
So,
well, I hope it does, because I have like a year's worth of footage of delivery men coming to my front door that I could easily use to train this thing, right?
Yeah. See, for me, I wanted it's going to be less about the person or the high vis jacket or anything like that. And it's going to be more about like, hey, recognize the truck, recognize the vehicle, like or the logo, right? Even for Amazon deliveries, it's only one or two companies that I've noticed that come out to my door. So, if you notice their van parked outside, great.
Yeah.
Shoot me an alert.
How clear is the image from your Ring camera to get onto the street? Like, could you reckon the image would be clear enough to see or to recognize the logos enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, again, I don't have a very large lot, so it's not like it's,
right.
It's what, like I can fit one car, and then there's a sidewalk, and then there's the bottom of the driveway, which is another 6 feet or something like that. So it's
as long as they park outside the front of your house, you're fine.
Which they always do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these companies are masters in branding too, right?
Yeah,
you see giant brown truck, you're like, okay, this is UPS. If you see a giant white truck with a FedEx logo, okay, it's a FedEx, right? So it's not difficult. They make it easy for you in that sense, right? and that way, I don't have anything because I haven't looked into the legality of doing facial recognition against these people or anything like that. So I'm just going to keep it, the way I see it. If your truck is branded, you want to be recognized. So my camera is recognizing that, right? As opposed to the individual driver or the person. And that stuff changes every day, right? Like, I mean, I might have
track that, right?
Bob one day, Alice the next day.
Exactly.
Know, right? Like, so yeah, again, this is like a, check in with me in 3 years and I'll let you know how it's going.
or not going.
Yeah. Or not going. I suspect this is going to be one of those things that I abandon, but I'm trying to stick with it for now.
Yeah.
see where I can get.
I'm very interested, so I'll be sure to ping you about it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up the first episode for the year. Our plan for this year, of course, is to keep up with the Home Assistant release schedules, sprinkle in a few of our regular guest interview episodes throughout the year as well, or throughout the month, I should say. Yeah. And work on some more spotlights. So yeah, you'll be hearing from us soon.
That's right. Hopefully we will talk soon. And again, remember the new release schedule, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@haspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on haspodcast.io.